I think we ought to start. How does everybody feel about that? 7 o'clock. Okay, great.
I'm going to pop the agenda up just so that everybody can see it.
Thank you. Very good. So welcome to Wards 1 and 8 NPA. And we are really happy you joined us. Please bear with our technical, difficulties if we have them. We're all new at this. And we lost Sydney, who was our kind of backbone the last few meetings. Anyway, if you are having trouble getting to the meeting, if you'll call Jonathan at 802-777-3521, he's our tech support tonight. So we do have a few announcements. Number one, I want to remind people that the 2020 census deadline has been extended. You can fill it out online, by phone, or by mail. And the census is more than a population count. It's a way to shape the future of our community. I also want to remind people that July 1st was the start date for mandatory food waste composting in the whole state of Vermont. Contact me or anybody if you're having trouble with that. We've done it in my home for, 20 years or more. We've had a compost in our back. And then also I want to invite anybody that might want to join the steering committee, Wards 1 and 8. We would always like new people. And some of us have talked about having an ad hoc committee that would monitor the development projects in Wards 1 and 8. The task would be to formalize issues and principles and develop a process to kind of keep on top of local developments. So the other thing that there was once an interest in an housing ad hoc committee. And if people would like to do that too, I'm not saying the steering committee will man these committees. We are looking for people that might want to do it, and we can help you join forces. We'll connect you together. So lastly, I just want to say that we are going to try to use time card. We are going to use time cards to stay on time. We're going to start with speak out. And if you'll raise your hand, Jonathan will call you and let you speak. You'll have 2 minutes, and then Linda will put up a 30-second warning card. And then also tonight, we've asked our presenters to save 50% of their time for questions and answers. Again, Linda will use time cards to sort of warn people on when their time is running out. We really are urging people to speak at this meeting. We want to hear from you because I think there's a lot going on. And instead of having, being talked to, we want to hear you also. So thank you for coming. Looks like we've got a great group here tonight so far. And we can start speak out. So Jonathan.
Maddie, you have your hand up.
So this is Maddie Posig.
Yes. So am I, can
You're
you guys
on.
hear me?
You're on.
You're on.
Okay. So I had the pleasure of watching the city council meeting on Monday night. It was a long meeting, but I stayed on to see the representatives from Champlain and UVM explain their plans for the students returning and their plans for dealing with the virus. I live in a heavy student neighborhood on Hungerford Terrace. I've lived here a very long time. And I was very upset on Monday night. I thought the counselors asked some poignant and excellent questions. And I felt that the UVM representatives, although they tried to answer a lot of the questions, I felt like a number of them, they had no answers for. They're looking into it. And that was really, really disturbing to me, considering that school starts 2 weeks from today. I'm part of a neighborhood group that has been reaching out to the city and the university since June because a number of us are older residents. My husband and I are both seniors with some health issues. We have pretty much stayed isolated in our house since March. I don't even go to the grocery store. I order all my food online. I haven't been in a store of any sort since early March. And I feel that Vermonters and Burlingtonians have done an outstanding job in containing the virus. And now we have UVM, and in my opinion, being very irresponsible and very reckless and inviting out-of-state students to come to Vermont and live off campus with very little monitoring. And in fact, in the president's response to Moreau's letter that he sent last week, he said, and I quote, "The students who reside off campus are not under the direct supervision of UVM." And it became very apparent to me Monday night that the onus is on the permanent residents to kind of report. And, you know, I was a teacher for a long time. It's almost like tattle on the students. Like, it's up to us to control their behavior. And I think that puts us in a very awkward position. I also was surprised, maybe naively so. I thought the president was going to come to the city council meeting. I also think he should be here tonight. I mean, wards 1 and 8 pretty much are the ones that surround the university, except for maybe ward 6. I feel bad for Gail and Joe. I think that they're trying really, really hard. I think they're trying to sell a plan that they didn't create. And so they're having to defend the president. And I know Max invited him on Monday night to come to a city council meeting. I thought Moreau articulated the concerns of the city really, really well in his letter. He was very specific. He was very concrete. I read President Garamella's response to him, and I felt like he didn't answer one single concern of Moreau's. All he did was tout his plan, how great it is. The governor loves it. Dr. Levine loves it. Well, you know, Dr. Levine helped him create the plan. So therefore, I don't think he's going to be critical of it. And to end, I guess I would like to say that I feel this is all about money, finances, economics. UVM lost a huge amount of money when the students went home. And if students stay home and continue remote learning, then UVM isn't going to get that room and board money that they need. And then in turn, the state of Vermont is going to have to give UVM even more money to survive. I also think that UVM's choice is not only putting the residents at risk, it's putting their staff and faculty at risk. I have friends that are professors that are highly concerned about feeling forced to go in person and teach students in person. I've done a lot of reading on this. I'm a teacher myself, and adolescents, I've taught high school. College students are older adolescents, but they always engaged in reckless behavior. I've seen students interviewed on TV across the country and also locally that kind of laugh at these guidelines that they're going to have to follow. And lastly, I want to also say that this has been one of the worst summers I've ever experienced here in Burlington. There have been huge house parties, and I think that they are a result of the bars having too strict guidelines for the students to follow. So their alternative is to have these huge house parties, lots of drinking, no social distancing, no masks, not safe. We've seen across the South, these are super spreaders. We have a very low infection rate in Vermont right now, and I feel personally afraid that this is all going to change, and I'm really disappointed in UVM. I'm a UVM alum, and I'm embarrassed to say so now. Thank you.
Thank you, Maddie. Okay, so we have Tom's hand up. Jonathan, there you go.
It says I'm talking, but I didn't raise my hand. But
Okay.
as long as I have the floor.
You're good. You're good now. You're good now.
I didn't raise my hand, but
Louis.
No, we got Louis. We got Tom should be able to talk. He needed to unmute himself, but you're on the phone is the deal.
I'm on the phone.
Tom,
Got it.
Okay, I just have a real quick question. And that's it. I got a tax bill today, but I was expecting that it would reflect a reappraisal, and it did not. and was wondering what the status is. Are we going to get reappraised this calendar year? And when will reappraisals be reflected in taxes? Does anyone know?
Yeah, it's next year, Tom. The reappraisal completes at the end of this year, and it'll be January, I think, where the reappraisals will be reported, and then there'll be a kind of a informal review and grievance procedure before a more formal one. For the next April 1st is when the new appraisals go in.
And so I would expect that I'll see it in the tax bill I get in 2021.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
So do we have any more hands? Anybody else want to speak? Actually, if we have more time, if I may echo what Maddie said, I know I'm the facilitator, but I do want to say that I also have experienced what she has been experiencing. And I've been sending pictures of the morning after of, 100 red beer cups, and particularly 2 properties on Loomis Street that when I sent in the addresses to Gail and Joe, Gail said she had spoken to those tenants previously. So I feel like this isn't a time to give warnings. This is a time to get tough. And I just think that UVM is really letting students be very reckless. And I also know as a landlady that I have an apartment, a duplex that we put it on Craigslist that it would be available October 1st. And in less than 24 hours, we had 17 people write us that they were interested in it. I've had this place 14, 15 years. This has never happened before. And many people, when they want to see your apartment, they give a little bio of who they are and what's going on. And there were, I'd say at least 4 that, people sometimes aren't upfront, but they were sophomores. They wanted to know how many people, it's a 2-bedroom place. They wanted to know how many people we would allow to live in there. And so also your rule that freshmen and sophomores live on campus is being broken. So really the drinking, the fireworks, and then people moving off campus that shouldn't be. It's just really out of control this year. And I hope UVM will really step up. We're looking forward to this panel, which unless we have any other speakers for Speak Out.
Lewis, I think wanted to speak.
Yeah, I just want to second Maddie and Karen's concerns about the student nuisance in the neighborhood. And I haven't heard anyone mention landlords in that regard. And I've always felt that the landlords get away with murder. They do whatever they want. They're the ones that know how many people are occupying, how many bedrooms in their places, and they should be held responsible. And I think that, there should be a dialogue with City Hall and with the police department that not only the tenants and the students get the fines for noise violations, but that the landlords start to feel some of the heat on this and take some responsibility in this matter. And I'm just going to throw out for Karen and Maddie my telephone number. I'm Louis Siegel, 267 Pearl Street, 802-399-8857. I'd be willing to participate in any initiative that addresses this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis.
Okay, Tom, you have another comment?
Yeah, one quick comment. Does anyone know if you do see a violation, like there's a party and people are, an unreasonable number of people are congregating together, who who the legal authority is that you go to? Do I call the state police because this is a governor's order that's in violation? Or do I go to the campus police because these are students, and campus police, as far as I know, are not limited to enforcement within the school grounds? Or do I call the Burlington Police Department?
Wendy, you want to answer that for us?
I'm happy to answer that. So you should go ahead and call the Burlington Police Department. That is the first call that should be made. The way that UVM police and Burlington police interact, the way I understand it, is that if the Burlington police are unable to take the call, they can call the UVM police and ask them to go in their stead. And you're right, the UVM police are sworn officers, so they can do law enforcement duties, not only in the city of Burlington, but anywhere in the state of Vermont. So, but the first call should be to BPD. And if they're unable to handle the call, they can pass it along to UVM. I would imagine that the state police would not get involved with this unless there was, some sort of more, something that Burlington and UVM needed help with, because it's not really their jurisdiction to be within the city of Burlington.
Thank you. So
can I add one more thing? I forgot something,
Yep.
Sorry. And the other thing, Tom, is that if you would like to, you can also provide a witness statement or information about what's happened to the Office of Student Community Relations, or also to our Student Conduct Office. And what Maddie, one of the things that Maddie was saying in her comments is that, I was making a plea for people to help us with information. And I'm going to repeat what I said the other night, which is that we don't think that it is just the responsibility of the neighborhoods or the city. We do know that we have a special responsibility to try and hold our students responsible, not only to the laws that the governor has put out of the state of Vermont, but also to the policies that UVM has put into effect surrounding COVID. But we get put in a pickle if someone sends us a picture and says, here's a picture of people having a party. We don't know necessarily, that has happened a lot in the past few weeks, where we don't get an address, we don't get a date, we don't get a time, and we don't have someone who's willing to talk to us more about what the issue is. So my plea to everyone who's listening tonight is that if you do see something and want to say something, the best course of action is to start with BPD. And if you're not comfortable with that, or if you don't feel like that's a good option, then please report as much information as you have to us on campus. And we will try and do our best to follow through and take care of it, and to enact the correct discipline on that event. Thanks.
Okay, it looks like Senator Pearson wants to speak. You want to let him speak, Jonathan?
Yeah, thank you. Just to follow up on that question, Wendy, last Friday, I guess there was a community meeting. We talked about the idea of a hotline or something. I don't think I'm alone when I say it just does not make sense to me that the first call is to the Burlington Police. First of all, they're really busy. And if noise violations are any indication, they will come, they will deal, but it will be well after the fact. And it's rare that it ends up working out to truly address the problem in the moment. And it just seems to me like for something like this, first of all, I don't really want Burlington law enforcement deviating from domestic violence, other issues that are more acute. But at the same time, the neighborhood, we all have these concerns. So what about the idea we talked about the other day of a hotline where I don't know who staffs it. I don't know how you work it exactly, but it seems like the first order of business should be to call UVM, and you guys quickly look up if students live there, whatever, and engage that way. I mean, I'm uncomfortable with the idea that you're sort of second or third on the list. And I guess I wonder if there's been a discussion to revisit that.
Gail has part of that as her presentation, but since we haven't gotten to our presentation yet, I'll either let Gail answer it when she's giving her presentation, or she can start to speak to that directly now. But I will say that, you know, while we have talked about it since we talked last Friday and Monday, and we are working on it, and we know that there's time sensitivity surrounding it, I also want to be clear that whatever solution we come up with, we will not take UVM staff and have them go onto private property to try to break up a party, because we do not have the legal right as staff members of the university to enter onto somebody's private property. And so, you know, we are trying to figure out ways that we can, you know, figure out in the moment things to do. And again, I'll let Gail speak to that now. But there, you know, we are not law enforcement, and we cannot write a ticket to someone. I mean, we don't have the ability to do that.
Okay, it looks like Susan has her hand up.
Okay.
Jonathan?
Yep,
Susan?
she can unmute herself, I think. You have to unmute yourself.
Oh. What? Talking permitted, Susan. I don't know. It looks like she's still muted.
I can keep
No, it
clicking the
does, I'm
button.
sorry, it does say talking. So while you're figuring that out, Maddie, you want to do a follow-up? I see your hand is up.
Sorry, I did want to do a quick follow-up to Wendy. A couple of things, Wendy, just from, I don't know where you live, but for living in the hood for over 40 years, one thing, and I understand it, but BPD puts noise complaints at the bottom of their priority list. And so oftentimes you'll call and an hour to 2 hours will elapse. It's usually late at night, so I don't want to wait up to speak to them because I would like to go to sleep. And I wonder if they ever even show up, because these same places have parties time and again. And they seem to be the places that are abusing the guidelines. I think Chris Pearson's idea is a great idea. Rather than tying up the police, maybe there would be some alternative. And then I also want to know, about 2 or 3 years ago, UVM and BPD instituted these neighborhood patrols. I saw police officers walking around my neighborhood, and that was probably the 2 best falls I've ever seen here. I'm between College Street, Bradley, Buell. I mean, I'm in the thick of it. And it was a much better year. It was a lot calmer. And I just think students are students, kids are kids. They come to college to get away from their parents, and they don't necessarily make good choices. And I don't know how to help them do that. And, you know, noise is an irritation. This virus is life and death. And like I said, we're seniors, and I'm really worried. So I'd like to know what happened to the neighborhood patrols in particular, and to tell you that calling the police is not always very effective, especially on a Friday or Saturday night. July 3rd was so busy that when I called, because there was a huge party on College Street by Hungerford, they said, "You're our 40th caller. We'll get to you when we can."
So I'm going to let Gail talk after I address this thing about the joint patrols, and talk a little bit to all of you about what she and Joe and their offices have been working on in terms of these alternative ideas, because I think it would help for her to get that out there. But in terms of the joint patrols for noise and for what we call quality of life patrols, those usually start back up when the school year starts up, and we are working to get them starting back up and running when students are back and classes start. So I think you will be seeing those again in the coming weeks. We will be doing the noise patrols.
Great. So it looks like a really good segue into our next part on the agenda, although I do hate to cut anybody off. I see somebody.
So, yeah, Neil's up, and Susan may be able to speak if she unmutes
Okay.
herself.
Very good. If you can let them
So,
speak, that's great.
Neil, would you like to start?
if I can withhold my question until after Gail's presentation, it might be better.
Okay. And we will have time. I've asked the presenters
Okay.
to respect that there'll be 50% of the time is their presentation, 50% is question and answer. So Susan, did you want to wait also, or? We can't find you, unfortunately. Okay, so
Susan, I'm not sure why you're not unmuting, but if you want to try a little later, I'm not sure what the story is.
So what we have now for tonight is a panel of people. We have Wendy Koenig, we have Gail Champnoy. It looks like, I thought I saw Joe Spidell. Yes, Joe Spidell, we should get him on the screen, please.
Yeah, he's
And
here.
then we also had Lieutenant Jason Lawson wanted to be up with this group, and Moreau Weinberger. So we have given 45 minutes to this, with like half of it with the presentation and half for question and answer. And I think it will be, this is a really good thing. Thank you all for being here. So Wendy, you wanted to start first.
Sure, and Joe, Gail, and I all have pieces of this presentation. So what I'm going to go over are the pieces of the main tenets of our reopening plan, just to get that information out there. And then we'll let Joe and Gail talk about what they're trying to do for engagements with off-campus students in particular, and also enforcement of COVID violations. So we have 4 parts, main parts to our plan. One is de-densification. I think some of you may have heard that we will be opening up the university, but we also have given any students that would like a stay-at-home option. So instead of returning to campus, if they would like to, they can stay at home and take their coursework all online. So far, we have about 1,400 students who have signed up for that option, but it is open to them until August 30th. And our projections are that we'll have about 2,000 students who choose to stay at home. So by eliminating those students on campus, it helps us to de-densify both residence halls and also classrooms. So we will be having different modes of instruction also to help us de-densify. So what that means, for example, is if you have a class that's on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, a third of the class will be in person on Monday. The other 2/3 will be receiving a streamed version of that class from their professor. And then a third of the class will go Wednesday and a third will go on Friday, which will enable us to keep all of our classroom space between 25% and 48% filled. And each one of those rooms will make sure that there's at least 6 feet for social distancing. All students are required to wear masks whenever they're on campus, especially in public areas, even outdoors. So we're working on that. We're also curtailing visitors. So when we have move-in this year, students will be allowed to have 2 folks help them with move-in, likely parents or friends that can help them move their belongings in. But after move-in is completed, there will be no visitors at all allowed to any residence halls on campus. And we will be curtailing visitors across campus. The second piece is our comprehensive testing program, which is a program that we're proud of and that is one of the most aggressive in New England and even across the country. We've developed this program with infectious disease specialists from the Vermont Department of Health, from UVMMC, from our College of Medicine. And the way that it will work is that we're requiring a pre-arrival test. A student will have to take a test that's sent to them in the mail. They will get results of that within 24 to 72 hours, and they have to send us, well, the company sends us the result before they arrive on campus, with the idea of catching positive cases before they even arrive in Vermont. Additionally, they will be tested on day 0 when they arrive here on campus. And then they will be tested again on day 7. From that point on, we'll be testing students once a week for 5 weeks. And at that, when we get towards that 5-week point, we'll be checking in before that with our infectious disease specialists again to revisit that. What that means is that we may need to test students more often, we may need to test them the same amount, or we may need to test them a little bit less often. We need to figure out how that goes based on what kind of results we're getting for the first wave of students coming back onto campus. For folks that are interested, that test, from what I understand, is the PCR test, which is supposed to be one of the highest accuracy tests that there is. Of course, that with any test, it's not foolproof, but we chose that test because it is the most sensitive test. There's a quarantine and isolation program that we have in effect. We just sent a letter out to students about 10 days ago that describes how they need to quarantine, what that means, what it means to isolate, giving them definitions that are coming out of the CDC and also our own policies, which state that, you know, quarantine and isolation. In quarantine, you do not leave your house, you don't go out for exercise, you stay home, you have food delivered. We're giving them some options on how to do that. And isolation means that you must stay in your own room and bathroom. And if a student who lives off campus is not able to isolate in their off-campus housing, then we've contracted with the Vermont Department of Health to provide an isolation space. And for our students on campus, the governor's orders require us to reserve 5% or up to 5% of our undergraduate residential population. And we have taken some of our residents' housing offline and turned that into isolation space so that if we do have positive cases that come up on campus, we can isolate those students immediately and monitor them daily through the UVM Student Health Service and also some social work means. And then the next piece is off-campus outreach and communication. And so I'm going to let Gail and Joe speak to that. Thank you.
Great. Gail and Joe, you want to, actually Jonathan, or they maybe can unmute themselves? Gail, there you go. And Joe Spidell?
I'm here too. I'm having a little trouble with my video quality, so I'm just not going to start the video, but I'm right here.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Well, thank you, Wendy. Appreciate the information and passing it off to me. When the mayor was here in July for the meeting, he had mentioned that the June move-in had been successful when it comes to COVID. And I give a lot of credit to the city for their box it in strategy. I also know that UVM had a wheel with lots of spokes. We did prevention, intervention, and restoration. And the quality of life issues, yes, I know that that's going on in the city, but to separate out the COVID response from the quality of life. We are continuing everything that we did for the June move-in because that was successful. We also had I had come to the board in June just to show all the survey results. And I had shared with everyone that the majority of our off-campus students had moved in June because that's when their leases started, but they didn't have job internships, which would usually keep them from coming back to Burlington. And they also had a high degree, 83% didn't sublet. And that's a huge difference from in the past. So the bulk of them were here in June. There were some that are coming in August, but those numbers were a lot smaller. Some of the things that I'm seeing, because our office has been out in neighborhoods, we have been going door to door because that's the most successful strategy. We're not knocking on doors, but we're leaving off postcards that students have posted in their window about self-distancing, hand washing, wearing a mask. And we're trying to norm that. And so what I've noticed, as my staff has noticed, is there's 3 groups of students. And I want to say we have a lot of students in the community, and I do feel like that we have students doing the right thing. And in fact, Lieutenant Jay Lawson said when he was out and his officers are out, there are students, young people, don't know if they're students or not, doing the right thing, and is there a way to reward them? And we've been doing that. We've been giving out gift certificates to Creamies and to other things when we see good behavior. So thank you, Jay, for that. And we'll also be able to make them available to the Joint Noise Patrol officers. The second group are students who are doing the right thing, but they have roommates or they have guests that aren't doing the right thing and they're struggling. And so what we did for that was I'm on the phone with them or on email or video, and we're going through some tips. So the tips are a couple of things. One is having difficult conversations with their roommates. And the second is how to manage a household. And we had a lot of success on a South Union Street as one example. I started off writing them a letter about the impact on the community that many of the neighbors had made me aware of. The students wrote a letter of apology that I shared with the neighborhood, went through those tips, and there were no problems according to the neighbors after that. And the students for the first weekend, there was nothing going on in their house. And the good part about that is you sometimes get a magnet house. So you have a few friends over, and then they might invite a few friends, and then other people see, oh, wait, I have action going on there, let me go over. So we're working really hard to end that magnet house problem that we've seen in the community. And then we have the last category, which are people not doing the right thing. And so I start off with the letter. If the behavior continues or more egregious, I contact the landlord. I've had phone calls with landlords, I have email communications, and I had 7 landlords intervene with their tenants through a process of the letter to the landlord. And then the next is with the green and gold promise that UVM has. If there is a record, as Wendy said, if it's very clear what like sometimes someone will just say something happened at a house, but that's not helpful to us. I need details. Working very, very closely with Ann Brenya in her neighborhood on Bradley and Buell. And I have a huge list of all the houses that have already, anytime a neighbor sends a house concern to me, I have done a process with that household. And I have a whole map that I sent out to some neighbors about, here's all the houses, here's what happened, letters to the landlords, letters to the tenants, phone calls, meetings. And then the next part is the outcome. Of all the houses so far on the list, there were 2 that had additional issues. And so I always ask, I know it's a lot on neighbors to have to contact me and tell me about a problem, but if I don't know about it, there's nothing I could do about it. And that's the process I've been using. So the last part I'll mention is we had a community coalition meeting on last Friday. There were 27 people who came. They were neighbors, they were landlords, they were people from Champlain College, students, staff from UVM, and some of the offices in the city. There were state representatives, there were city councilors. Came out with 2 things that they wanted the group to work on. And the coalition is dedicated to the health and safety in neighborhoods. That's their area that we work in. These were the 2. What can UVM do in the moment when something's going on in the city and in the neighborhoods? And then the second one was, could there be some peer program with UVM students, an ambassador type program that Ann Brenya had also brought up with the university, where they do outreach and education to their peers. And it's no contact, and that's what we have to deal with. But we've been very successful with the door-to-door communicating. Give you one last example. In the Isham Street neighborhood, there was a concern about outdoor fires that were in their containers, but we're not allowed to do open fires in the city. And so we talked to the fire marshal and said, if we did a postcard and we went around and delivered it, he said, thank you very much, because that would really save them some staff time. And we did that, and the report back from neighbors was there were no more fires in the backyard in the containers. So we know it's very successful. What I would have to say is, in a normal time, I would be knocking on doors, visiting with people, getting the story, working on the conflicts, trying to work through it. We are in a very strange period now where I can't do that person to person. We're also in a very sensitive area around policing. So if policing is not an option in what we're going to do, I can't knock on doors. The question becomes, how do we transition in our neighborhoods during this time? And I think we have a large job in front of us, and it shouldn't be all on the shoulders of neighbors, shouldn't be all on the shoulders of UVM, shouldn't be all on the shoulders of the Burlington Police Department. We are a community. And I understand, I respond to everybody who sends me a communication. I take this deeply. I'm a resident of the city. I am also in a vulnerable age group. And I feel like together, I think we can make some strides. And so love your good ideas. I love when neighbors send me good ideas, like Ann Brenya asking about an ambassadors program. Talked to Councilor Joan Shannon today and had some really solid ways in which we can address the mask wearing and no social distancing. So for the last part, I would say that I live, my office is over the bike path, and all ages don't have masks on. I can tell you that. I don't walk on the bike path anymore, and they're not doing 6 feet of distancing. Joan Shannon said in the South End, they're not students, they're not wearing masks, they're not doing social distancing. A friend of mine came back from Portland, Maine, and from Bar Harbor, Maine, and everybody had masks on. And not only that, in Bar Harbor, they actually have receptacles where if you don't have a mask, you can get a mask with the hand sanitizer. I really feel that we need to norm that in our community. And I think that not norming that when you have new residents coming in is going to be difficult. So those are a lot of the outreach that we've been doing. I can give you more particulars during the Q&A, but I'll hand it over to Joe now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Gail, and thank you, Karen, and others for having us here tonight. I just want to echo a few things and elaborate on a few things that I think Wendy and Gail both touched on already. You know, one of the things that Gail said that I think is really true is that we need to approach this from as many directions as we can, you know, with as many tools as we can. The city has been a great partner, BPD, code enforcement. I don't think it's been mentioned yet, but code enforcement has also been following up on incidents when they are hearing about them, any COVID-related incidents with landlords and renters. So that's another, you know, tool that we can use. But I think we're all going to have to work together to address concerns about health and safety, as Gail had said, in this really unusual time. In terms of, you know, real-time enforcement, I do hear what Gail and others have said about, you know, sensitivity around policing. One of the things that we really need to do as much of as possible is to get as much information as possible so that we can follow up with students, whether it's through Gail's office or student conduct. We have a student conduct office that basically is involved when in the past, or, you know, throughout the years, we have had student conduct be involved in things like noise violations, party violations, and those kinds of incidents. And when we have that information, we know who was there, we know how many people, we know what was going on, we are able to run students through our student conduct process, and they are held accountable on campus for those incidents, even if they might also get a ticket, you know, a municipal ticket or a state ticket for drinking or hosting a party or noise. So that's just to say that, you know, I'm going to run through a couple of different ways that people can, you know, report incidents, you know, in the moment, but also afterward. So in the moment, again, that real-time enforcement is with BPD. And I know that BPD has been out there already mostly educating students and other people in the community about not only quality of life, but COVID, you know, health-related incidents, including social distancing and mask wearing. So I know BPD has been out there already, I think primarily with an educational mission, but I know that they are also willing and will provide information if there are other incidents. So if there is a big party that's going on, BPD can respond and basically, you know, assess whether a ticket is warranted for something like, you know, a large gathering, noise, alcohol, those kinds of things. While they are there, they can also document a lot of valuable information. You know, what's the address? Who are the people that were there? What was going on? All of those things are useful. Even if a ticket does not get written, a municipal ticket for noise or alcohol or whatever, that information then goes to the university. So we have a group of people that coordinate with, you know, BPD, code enforcement, and others to basically hold students accountable for those actions. So in past years, again, alcohol, you know, noise and those kinds of things. For this year, you know, it's going to be very serious, and we're taking very seriously COVID-related incidents. So that's sort of the first step that someone can take to call BPD in the moment. Another option for people, if they don't want to do that, and if they don't want to wait that evening, if it's late and they don't want to wait for someone to respond, is to provide a sworn statement to BPD the next day. And that's simply calling BPD and talking to someone and saying, you know, this is the address, this is what I observed. If you have a picture to show them, you know, that could be included. But as much information as possible, that's going to make it easier for follow-up to happen. And then the other things that can happen afterward, and I think as Gail had mentioned already, is if someone believes that a student is involved, they can contact, you know, Gail basically at Student Community Relations at, you know, gail.champenoy@uvm.edu. There's also an opportunity to contact the UVM Student Conduct Office if you think a student is involved. And all this information is up on our website, so you can find it there. And that is just uvm.edu, and then there's a COVID update link, and there is a link from there that is for our Vermont neighbors. So again, another option is the UVM Student Conduct Office online form. If you believe a student is involved, again, as much information as can be included is very helpful, so that we can address this through our conduct system. Students have due process rights like anyone else in this country, and if we have enough information, we will do everything we can to hold them responsible. And I'll talk about what sanctions they are facing. There's also a BPD community affairs officer, Carolyn Irwin, and her contact information is up on that website as well. If a non-UVM person is involved, that would be a person to talk to. And finally, again, code enforcement is willing to follow up on COVID-related violations, and Bill Ward can be reached directly at his email address, wward@burlingtonvt.gov. So I'll just talk about the consequences, then I'll hand it off. I know Jay Lawson is there.
Joe, and
Okay.
everybody, remember we wanted to have like 22 minutes of your presentation, and then we really want to have people ask you questions. So
Okay, 1 more minute.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just going to say this really quickly. So for egregious violations, hosting an event, above the number that the state allows, et cetera, first offense would be a $250 fine, parental notification, and probation. A second offense, parental notification and suspension. And if there's added context, especially egregious, it might result in immediate suspension or dismissal. That's for egregious. For non-egregious, it is, less so. It's more about educational sanction, parental notification. Second offense, $250 fine, individual meeting with a university official, parental notification, probation, et cetera. So you can see that we are taking this seriously, and I will end there.
Okay, because we'd like to let Lieutenant Lawson speak, please. Okay. Are you unmuted?
I am. I believe you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great.
Go.
Well, thank you for having me come tonight. Appreciate it. It's nice to see so many people in the participant bars here, which I think might be some of the larger crowds that I've seen when I've actually been to some of the physical NPAs. So thanks everyone for attending. Obviously, it's a very important time for all of us. A lot of things instead of repeating a lot of the information, we've been jointly working collaboratively for my time in Burlington, so for over 20 years, on all these type of quality of life concerns. I remember when I started it being a $50 fine and watching students pass a hat around the house as the officer stood there and came back for the 4th, 5th time answering noise complaints. We've come a long way. I think there's a lot of opportunities as we look at these next steps, not only in our quality of life approaches, but everything else in our profession of policing. One of the things I would like to say too is, or reiterate, is the documentation piece on our part is very important. Our officers have been briefed about making sure we're noting incidents as if they were an incident of arrest. Wow, 30 seconds already.
Well,
I'm sure I'll be able to answer a lot of the questions.
will,
in the Q&A.
yeah.
So again,
give you a little more time.
yeah, thank you. We just want to be clear. Obviously, there was a comment earlier about us not responding. If anyone ever calls the police department, requests to meet with an officer, we will respond. That's a guarantee. It might not be within 5 minutes. I can guarantee that that clause. But we will do our best to get to the calls. And you all know the level of the call volume and the spectrum of calls we go to, from physical assaults to homicides to noise complaints to cigarette complaints. So there's a lot of things that we have to prioritize when the calls are coming in. And even as we are responding to the quality of life complaints, a simple call on the radio could change on our way. We strive to continue to give you guys the best service we can, and we're going to work and continue to work on these efforts with UVM and our partners in the neighborhood. And my phone is always open, so we can get to the Q&A and we can discuss some of the specifics that we're working on or some of the questions you have. I'd be happy to answer them.
Actually, Merle Weinberger, did you have something you wanted to say before we started the question and answer?
Hi, Karen. I would be happy to. I wasn't quite sure what the format was going to be, but I'm happy to sort of share my perspective on where we're at to tee things off.
Yeah, I mean, and then we really do want time still. I think the first part of the presentation went a little longer than we wanted, as usual, but I'd like to hear your take. I love the letter you wrote. I agree with it. I think that, you know, I really support all that you said in your letter, and I'm disappointed that the president of the university didn't come back more willing to make changes.
Well, it is nice, Karen, for us to agree on some things. I appreciate that. Let me take a step back and just say, clearly we're going into a critical period in our response to the pandemic, with public schools reopening and with college students returning. I would like to share that, you know, I enter this period with a lot of optimism and confidence that we are going to be able to continue Vermont's pretty remarkable record of suppressing the virus since coming out of the stay home period. And I will just, you know, just very quickly, if you'll allow, I mean, here's this map that maybe I know many people have seen, but I think is always just worth taking note of kind of where we stand. Vermont, just alone with Maine now, on track to contain COVID, and really all of New England charting a different course than the rest of the country. And then, you know, another way to cut the numbers is here in Chittenden County. We, this is on our dashboard. It gets updated every day. You can see there are no new cases today. The average number of new positive tests over the last, you know, couple weeks now, pushing 3 weeks, has been about 1 a day on average. And before that, it was about 5 a day. And what this means to me is that the kind of joint strategy, the strategy of the governor, the strategy that Burlington is working hard to be part of, and is of boxing in the virus, is working. The virus is here. There is some spread of it, but when there are new infections, because we have good testing resources, because we have good contact tracing resources, we have we have quarantine program in place the city is running. Most of all, because Vermonters have a very have really committed themselves to doing what it takes to box in the virus, to contain the virus. We are going on, you know, our 3+ month now of being in a very good place. And I really mean that. None of these strategies would have worked if Burlingtonians and Vermonters weren't complying very much with the governor's orders around staying home, and then around all of the methods, hygiene, masking. It's and I share all this. I like to make sure people are clear how well we're doing, because I hope it gives us confidence and inspires us to keep working on this. Clearly, the reopening of the schools and the colleges is a real threat to this continued stretch. There is no doubt. I think this is the toughest challenge we've faced since mid May, when the reopening really began. But I do believe it can be done, and I think it's the right goal. And I've been clear on that, and I remain both believing we should have in-person learning in our public schools, and for college students that want to come back. I think it's important for the community. It's important for education. It's important for the economy. For us to have in-person learning. I think that is the whole purpose of the strategy we're in now. Boxing in the virus gets the rest of it, gets us, if we can succeed at that, we can get out of this box and resume some normalcy and turn on these high value parts of our society. And I want to be clear, although, you know, there's been some tension, obviously, and some back and forth in the media between myself and UVM. I want to make sure not lost there. It was in my letter, and I mean this, clearly UVM, including people on the call and many, many others, have absolutely committed themselves to trying to do to continue this record of success in the community, to making their campus safe. Enormous resources have gone into this for a long period of time. And part of my purpose, part of my purpose in writing the letter is I did think there were areas that the public would benefit from, and the city would benefit from, if there was a fuller understanding of why certain decisions were being made the way they were. And I appreciate that UVM's response in some ways has sort of added some light to areas that I thought were unclear. I was concerned about this late change of going from 2 times a week testing to 1 time a week testing. I asked for an explanation. I think the explanation that's been offered is a fulsome explanation, and especially when kind of corroborated by some of these experts in other parts of the country that have argued for these very high standards of testing every 2 or 3 days. Those same authors who called for that in one paper, it was meaningful to me to see that they are supportive of the UVM plan. There are 4 areas that I do hope that additional talks in the coming days, and there are going to be additional talks before the end of the week between the state and the UVM and the city. I'm hoping there is, and really think it's important that there be some movement in some additional areas. I can get into some of the details of that if there's time for that, if people want that. I am still hopeful that we are going to kind of emerge from this week as the large scale numbers of students start returning on the 20th. I hope all of the parties, organizations involved, can be on the same page about how we're trying to fight the virus, continue to suppress it together. Coordination has been one of the keys of the Vermont success story, as Dr. Leffler says every week when he comes on the briefing that I generally give with him on Wednesdays. And I think it's important that we get back to a place where we are coordinated and working towards the same plan. And I do hope, I know there's a high level of concern about this issue, about UVM's plans, and I hope some additional conversation and maybe some movement on UVM's part might go a long ways towards addressing some of those, not just my concerns, but more importantly, concerns of the community, so that we can be united as we head into this crucial period. I very much hope we're back again together at the end of, in a month. I'll feel we're in a very different place if those positive numbers, those very low transmission numbers that I showed, if we're seeing that a month from now, that will be a huge success, and will mean that we have met this challenge. I will say let me leave there so there's time for questions. If there's questions about office campus parties, I'm happy to speak to that further.
Okay, let's let some hear from the community now, please. Does anybody want to raise their hand? We have Neil, who we were saving. So you want to let Neil speak?
I think it's up to Neil.
What's that?
I think it's up to Neil.
Okay, Neil, you need to unmute yourself. We're letting you speak.
Okay, I'm unmuted, correct?
Yes, we're good.
Okay. A couple of questions and thoughts. One is, and so let me finish the questions, they'll be quick, and then whoever wants to respond. You say you're curtailing visitors on campus. Does that mean that a citizen cannot walk through campus with a mask on? That's question number 1. Number 2 is, someone stated that UVM can enter private property. I think it's a time to be creative. Why can't you get landlords to voluntarily agree with UVM to set up some system where UVM ambassadors can enter their property under certain circumstances? It seems to be that if they voluntarily agree to it, the lawyers could draft something that would be mutually consistent. The third thing is, and I don't profess to be a scientist, but the best I understand, and I have read a lot of the literature, is that if, for example, a student comes to Burlington on Sunday and Saturday, that student contracts COVID, that if he's tested on Sunday, it will not show up as a positive, that you have to wait for 3 to 5 days before a positive test will show up. So I just wonder, in terms of UVM testing on day 1 and then not testing for another week, what your comments are. So those are my 3 questions.
Okay, Wendy, are you going to answer that, or?
Or I will attempt to answer all 3. So number 1, when I say visitors are curtailed, what we really mean by that is that we don't want people that aren't UVM students or faculty or staff to be inside buildings, especially residence halls. So once we get students on campus and they've had help moving their things in by their families or whoever is with them to help them, then at that point, only students with key cards will be allowed in dorms. We won't be allowing visitors to come into dorms from outside of UVM. If you are a member of the public that wants to walk across UVM's campus with a mask on and social distancing, that's fine. If you want to enter into a public space of UVM with a mask on and social distancing, that's fine too. We're mostly talking about not allowing people to enter residence halls where transmission could happen easily. The second thing, I think that your point is well taken about being creative. I don't know if Gail or Joe want to speak more to this, but we have a task force together after last week's Community Coalition on Friday about how we can do more things in the moment. We're talking about how we can do that. One thing we are doing is we will do an ambassador program. My understanding is that that's going to originate from the Student Government Association. Some of those folks are back on campus and they're working on how they're going to do that in the next, I would say, week or so. So I think that having students do peer-to-peer education is absolutely appropriate. Leafleting, flyering, talking to folks in a socially distanced way with masks on is fine, or doing digital meetings with each other or information sessions that are safe and online would be great too. What I mean is that I have received some suggestions from folks that UVM takes staff members like Gail or Joe or people that work with them and have them go on all night shifts and enter onto people's private property when there's a party with drinking and try to break those things up. And I am saying that I don't think that that's an appropriate thing for UVM staff that are not trained in conflict negotiation to do. And I think that it's not appropriate for UVM staff to be working in that way. So that's what I meant by that. In terms of the testing protocol, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical expert myself. All I can tell you is that we've worked closely with many medical professionals, infectious disease specialists, who are pretty confident that if we have a pre-test to weed out as many positives as we can before students get here, test them on day 0, and then have them go into their quarantine if that's appropriate. Any student coming from a hot spot, a red county, or a student that has to travel to UVM on any sort of public transportation, a plane or a bus or anything of that nature, will come to campus and have a 7-day quarantine, and then they'll be tested again on day 7. And so I think that with that strategy, that we're going to be able to weed out as many positive cases as possible. Hopefully with the pre-testing, we're going to catch many before they even leave their home state to come to Vermont. And I do want to assure people that I know someone said on the call earlier that they think that this is all about money for UVM. And I want to assure you that that is really not the case. Of course, all businesses, including the university, have been affected by COVID-19, but we are very concerned about the health and safety of everybody that works on this campus, all of our students and everyone in this community. I think I can speak for President Garamella and everyone else I know that works at UVM, that we feel privileged to be a part of this community. And it is the big draw that has students, so many students wanting to apply here and come here. We know that Vermont is a special place. We know that Burlington in particular is a special place. And we really are doing all this work to try to make sure that people are safe and healthy. And I really want you to know that I mean that sincerely. So I appreciate your questions.
Okay. David Colley, would you like to ask a question?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, I had a quick comment and then a question. I just wanted to echo the sentiment that, you know, this is a big problem. The pandemic is a big problem, and it really is up to the whole community to provide solutions. And so to echo what the mayor said is that we really all need to get on the same page. And I think we all need to try a little harder in this time to make this work so that in 30 days, we really are at the same level that we are at today. So that's incumbent on us as neighbors to talk with students, to work with students before there are incidents that take place in our community. I know on our street, that's worked very well in terms of noise and that kind of issue. So I just want to put that forward, that it's up to all of us to make this work. Now, my question is related to something that Joe said, which he mentioned that if somebody saw a location that was hosting more than the above what the state allows. And this was a new concept to me because I inquired into this week, is under COVID, is there any restrictions regarding the number of occupants there can be at a private residence, for example, for a party? And the answer I got from the Burlington Resource and Recovery Center was no. The only restrictions are that people need to have masks and or they need to be socially distanced. But there's no restrictions that they could cite that says there's a limit on the number of people that can be in a dwelling. So I put the question out there, is there any information out there that's different than what I've received?
Okay.
I can answer that, Karen, quickly. I'm actually concerned. That does not sound like you got the right answer from the Resource and Recovery Center, and I apologize for that. There is a limit on gathering sizes that do apply to private residents. The limit is at this point in the pandemic, because things have been going so well, it has been raised a number of times by the governor. It's quite high right now. An outdoor gathering, you can have as many as 150 people. An indoor gathering can be, I believe, 25. One of the things the city is doing is having conversations with the state about taking some kind of action, and what form this will take, I don't know exactly, although I do expect there will be some kind of change here to announce shortly that would, for a limited period of time, reduce those levels, certainly the outdoor level substantially, and maybe the indoor level as well, until we are through this risk period. And this is one of the issues under further discussion. It's something we'll be talking about with UVM as well further. And I think to me, that makes a lot of sense. We had these limitations on group size earlier when we were coming out of the, stay home period. We had much lower assembly limits. I think until we're through this risk period, we should preemptively lower them again. And it's something we're working on.
Okay, we have Glenn and Holly, or Glenn or Holly. You want to speak?
Yeah. Hi, it's Holly. I have 3 questions. I'll put them out there and you guys, whoever can respond, can respond. One is, what's the scoop going to be around the transparency of UVM reporting their testing data for students? I know they're having it done by a separate agency. And so my question is there going to be a dashboard that we as the community can look at? And will those numbers be blended in with the state data for testing? That's my first question. Second question is, what's the threshold metrics for UVM for if there were to be outbreaks or cases for you to pivot from the current plan to all online? What are those metrics? What's that going to look like? And my third question is for off-campus students who leave the state for a day, what kind of monitoring, surveillance, and education is being done? Like if they just pop home for the day on a Saturday or a Sunday and they come back and they've gone to one of those red counties in Massachusetts or Connecticut, do they know that they need to quarantine again and get tested before they can leave? And how is that being monitored and surveilled on the off-campus? I know you guys are doing a great job on campus, it's these off-campus kids that I have the greatest concern. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Holly, for those questions. So the first one in terms of transparency on testing. So the companies that we have contracted with to do the testing, Vault and Broad Institute, will be sharing their test results with the Vermont Department of Health. That's one of the requirements of that contractual relationship. So the results will come to us, but they'll also go to the Vermont Department of Health. So they will see those. Additionally, UVM will be posting testing data on the website. The president has said that we'll post that data once a week. I know that there's been concern by folks that they would like to see that more often. And that's something I've taken back to him and have asked him to consider. So I would say stay tuned on whether we will be able to post those results more than once a week. In terms of the threshold metrics to go to all online, everybody would like me to have a magic number to say, we'll have X number of students that test positive and we'll shut our doors. I don't have a number on that. I know that President Garamella and our senior team have been meeting regularly with the governor's staff, with the Vermont Department of Health, and with Mayor Weinberger and some of his team, including me having conversations with all these folks. And so I can tell you that we will be talking regularly, at least once a week, if not more, to have conversations about what that looks like. And I can tell you that, the governor has the ability, as soon as he thinks that this situation is not safe, and same with Mayor Weinberger, to request that we shut our operation down. And if we get a spike that is going to endanger this community, then that's what we're going to have to do. And then the third question about leaving the state for the day. So we recently put out a memo to students and families, as I think I mentioned before, which details what the quarantine rules are for the state of Vermont, how to quarantine, how to isolate, and what all of those things are. So we're doing, and I know Gail and her team have also been talking with students about that a lot and doing some leafleting, and people are out in neighborhoods talking about it. So in terms of monitoring where every student travels at any time, I don't think we're going to be able to do that with, close to 11,000 students that we think will be coming back. But, we know students are very aware of what the rules are. And we also do have something called the Live Safe app, which students are going to be required to use, which is a device that will help us with contact tracing and also health monitoring. And so I think that might help us know if students have questions about those sorts of things. And so we will be using that to sort of follow students in the way that we can data-wise.
I'm sorry, I was muted. But so Amanda, I see we have Lewis and Maddie, but I'm going to go ahead with people we haven't heard yet, and then we'll get back to you. So Amanda is unmuted.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to follow up on the earlier discussion about reporting, and the city set up and has supported See-Click-Fix for years as a way of communication with departments. And I found it really a good resource. And I was wondering if the city and or the police department sees See-Click-Fix as a resource for reporting COVID-related issues and violations. And I was wondering if there was, I haven't checked recently, or if they would consider setting up a COVID reporting category. I think it's nice because you can attach photos and videos and give a detailed description of what's going on, and it doesn't provide an instantaneous results like calling the police department, but I've always found it as a helpful way of reporting non-urgent issues. And I guess maybe this would be for the mayor and Officer Lawson, maybe.
Lieutenant Lawson has an answer.
Well, I have an answer. So yes, I know many of us at the department actually have the app on our work phones. I know I personally used it myself to make reports to code enforcement as a private citizen at the time. So yes, it's a tool we're using. I do get alerts. The PD does receive alerts regarding complaints. During the initial stages of the presentation of COVID here, our department created a actual call type in our data management system to track COVID compliance and COVID checks. So we've been using technology as best we can, and definitely is part of our operational plan moving forward too.
Thank you.
Just to quickly add to that, Amanda, thank you for the question and the idea. And I like the thought that possibly, and I think what you're suggesting is that this could become a way of reporting where there have been incidents that are problematic. I will go back to the team that really kind of manages our C-Click site and see if, and we'll talk that through. I did just want to quickly share, because it's sort of exciting, I think might be interesting to some watching. We actually are using C-Click as part of our sort of the back end of our much of our COVID response. And just this is another part of our dashboard. You can see the C-Click logo down there on the right. Every time someone calls in or emails or uses the C-Click app on a COVID related, on a resource and recovery request of some sort, it does go into the system here, and it's helping us stay organized and follow up on these items. And it's kind of interesting to see the numerous ways in which the city has tried to respond to various needs that have come up. Almost 1,700 issues now that have been reported to the Resource and Recovery Center. You can see what they break down, and the supportive quarantine program is a growing area of the way the city is trying to support people in quarantine. Just thought you might find that interesting. So I like the idea of using this more, and we'll go back and kick around your idea, Amanda.
That's great. So we have two more hands, Lewis and Maddie. If you can be really quick, we're behind as usual. So Maddie?
Yeah, well, actually, Holly asked most of the questions, and I put my hand up earlier about the testing. So that's great. I'm also, Wendy, really glad to hear that the neighborhood patrols are going to be reinstated somehow. There was a rumor that they were not going to continue. So I think that will be really helpful in kind of a non-confrontational way. Just have officers walking around the neighborhood and just kind of getting the lay of the land, seeing what's happening. So Wendy, I just have a couple of specific questions about the testing. And I'm just curious why you've picked September 18th as a date, because everything I'm reading is like, that's sort of when things are going to start escalating. And when I was listening to Champlain Monday night, they're going to be testing all the way through to Thanksgiving break. So that's one question, how you came up with that date and why. And then how are you going to verify that you've tested all the off-campus students on day 0? And lastly, I just want to echo what Karen said, Moreau, that I thought your letter was excellent. And I still don't feel like the president articulated an answer for all of your questions and concerns. Also, Wendy, if you could explain why in the testing, the university was going to do it twice a week and now they're only doing it once. And I also think the state reports on a daily basis the number of new cases. And so I don't understand why UVM is only going to be reporting weekly. I think daily would be better. And I'm curious if there's going to be like a separate entity for UVM. I mean, not identifying people, but just number of cases. And I just feel that UVM has not been that transparent over the summer with their plans. And I think that has increased the anxiety of their neighbors. So I'm really pleased that we're having these discussions now. And hopefully moving forward, we will become, it will be more transparent and better communication.
I'm more than happy to answer your questions. I don't really understand the last part of what you're talking about, an alternate entity with the testing reporting. I don't know what you mean by that. Can you elaborate, please? Okay, I will just go ahead and answer what I can. So in terms of the date of September 18th, I think everyone seems to be thinking that that means on September 18th, we're going to stop testing people. That is not at all what that means. September 18th, I believe, will be 5 weeks from the time that students arrive on campus until that date. And so we have our plan for testing testing day 0, testing day 7, and then once a week through that September 18th day. Leading up to that September 18th date, as we see how the testing is going, we will do more consultation with our infectious disease specialists and with the testing companies that we're working with, Broad Institute, to see if they think that our testing needs to be more frequent at that time, or if it can stay at the once a week rate, if that's going well and providing us with the results that we need, or if they think that we need to pull back on it at that time. So all that September 18th date is 5 weeks in, where we will reevaluate what we're going to do with testing at that point in consultation with the medical experts. In terms of verifying students' testing both on and off campus, students will be assigned a day of the week that they're tested. We will not be testing all 11,000 students on Monday. They'll be put throughout the week, and they'll have a date and time that they are supposed to go to a particular location for the test. And so if they don't do that, it will be logged into the computer that they have not done their test. So we will be able to track that with our systems through the Broad Institute, who's providing the testing with us, and also with the Live Safe app that I mentioned before. There will be very strict penalties for not taking your test. So if you refuse testing, you can be suspended or expelled from school. So as far as we're concerned, you must do a test on your test day, or you're not going to be able to attend your classes or be a student at UVM. So we're going to take that very seriously. And then I think the last part of your question was about, well, you asked me about the once a week. As I said, that is what President Garamella has set up as a metric for putting out testing information on our website once a week. As I said before, we've had several requests to change that, and I have taken that to him for consideration. And so I'm sure that in his next conversation that he has with the mayor and others, that they'll be discussing that as to whether or not we can do that more frequently. And then, as I said, I didn't really understand the last part of your question about the testing. So if you'd like to repeat that, great. Or if I have answered that successfully, thanks.
I think that, Maddie, if you can contact Wendy directly to clarify the rest of your question, that would be best. Just, and we will take one quick response from Lewis, please, and then we really need to move on. But thank you so much for this, and I'm sure you'll hear from us a lot.
Thanks.
Lewis?
Yeah, this is very quick and very simple. I heard Gail talk about the community coalition meeting, and I monitor things pretty closely, and I never saw an announcement for the community coalition formation or its meeting last Friday. Could someone tell me about how that coalition was formed and where it announces its meetings?
Thank you. Any people welcome to come to the coalition meetings. I have a mailing list of about 95 names, and I'd be happy to add you to it. was started by a UVM student who was president of the Student Government Association 25 years ago, and it's been going strong since then. And it meets once a month, and we are going to have a September meeting. I haven't set the date yet because I'm waiting for my SGA co-chair, who's Aiden May, who is going to be facilitating those meetings, and he's working now. And when he gets to campus, he'll be able to give me his class schedule. But they are always on a Friday from 3 to 4:30, and we have a good showing of people, as I mentioned earlier. Lots of representatives from the community, from government, from UVM, from Champlain College.
So how do I get on the mailing list?
If you want to either send me your email, my email is Gail, which is Gail, Shampnois, SHAMPNOIS, @uvm.edu, and I'll make sure that you get on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so Jonathan has sent me a subtle reminder that we're getting behind, and thank you, Jonathan. We do have our, oopsie, it's gone already. It's time to move on to our school board, and we do have the principal, our new principal at EMS, Edmonds Middle School, here with us tonight. So Kathy is with us, Kathy Alwell. And James Kiefer, I believe is how we say it. Do you want to speak?
Okay, I just was going to introduce them both. I think that Sabrina, the assistant principal, is also here. Westick? Do you find her on there?
I'll look on the list, and you want to go ahead with the.
All right. I just wanted to welcome James and also give you a teeny bit about him so that we can, he sent me a bio, and I don't want to give the whole thing, but James has been a public school educator for 30 years. And for the first 22 years, he was a 7th through 12th grade math teacher and co-curricular coach and an instructional coach. And for the past 8 years, he has been principal at a 6th grade intermediate STEM school and at an ALC, which I think is Alternative Learning Community, but I'm not sure, and he can tell us more. So please, James, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you very much for inviting us. Yeah, so I've been in public education for 30 years, the last 8 of which as a principal. And I'm just very, very happy to be here. And once again, thank you for having me as your guest. I've got a couple things that I'll mention, but I'm sure that people will have more questions, so I'll try to leave time for that. I know we're a little behind schedule. August 20th is the first day that students will be, or excuse me, that August 20th is when teachers will be arriving. So they'll be on campus here real soon. And then September 8th will be the first day that students walk onto the campus. We will be functioning on a hybrid model, which means we'll have approximately half of the students on the campus at any point in time. The reason why is because currently the coronavirus numbers are very low, and we'd like to keep them low. And so we're trying to find that balance between getting kids into school and continuing their education while also keeping the students, the staff, and the community safe. As far as efforts that we're doing to keep everyone safe, all individuals before coming into the building will go through a screening process. We will also be curtailing visitors. All individuals will be wearing masks in the building. We're going to be encouraging people to wash their hands frequently, and we'll be utilizing social distancing in the building. So that's, again, the reason why we're going on a hybrid model. Once we start the school year, we're going to just watch very carefully. We'll be communicating with the Department of Health very carefully, just to make sure that we're on track, and we will then adjust accordingly. But we're really excited to have school starting again.
Very good. Thank you. We'll introduce Sabrina. I don't know how to say your last name.
Nobody does. It's Westteich.
Westteich.
Yep.
So welcome to
Thank you.
Burlington and the school community.
It's good to be here. I am a Burlington resident. I have been for a while, so I have children that attend Burlington Public Schools, and so it's nice to now work in my home district. Thanks for having me.
Very good.
I'll just go. This is Aaron Haji speaking, Ward 8 Commissioner for School Board. And I want to thank Kathy for welcoming our principals. And again, I echo what we said, that we're grateful to have you two on board. And I just wanted to touch base on our multilingual liaisons that have been doing incredible work in the district. And for those that are not familiar with the work of the multilingual liaisons, they help to bridge school community with multilingual families. So families that speak other languages other than English. So they're a critical part of our district. And I just wanted to make aware of their tireless work that they have been doing, especially through the pandemic, and that we value all the work that they're doing. So that's all I wanted to say tonight.
Thank you. Do we have anyone who would like to ask questions to the principal, vice principal, or our two school board commissioners? I'm not seeing any hands. Jonathan?
I don't see anybody.
Okay. Well, I hope you have a great school year. We have 3 children that went through the Burlington schools and they're doing great. They're all adults. Thank you. So we will move on now to the city councilors. Right?
Yeah.
We're ready with it. So Jane, you want to start? We could start with Jane. I see you're on the screen. I don't even see the other people.
I can, yeah, I can see everybody. All right, thanks.
Oh, I see Jack.
Yeah, I think everyone's here. Everyone's here.
Jack's on, and I'm just gonna keep my camera off because I have unstable internet, so to hear.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for facilitating this, Karen, and welcome to the school commissioners and for everyone being here tonight. So yeah, we're all going to touch on different things, but we've all taken a hand at all of the things. So we'll just each delve into specifics. So during our previous Monday night's council meeting, we unanimously passed a resolution that supports the creation of a dedicated task force to study a proposal for truly overdue reparations for African Americans living in Burlington as a result of the institution of slavery. So that's historic, very important, and the members of the task force that are not going to be necessarily city employees will get per diem compensation, which is also a little bit different. And I'm very proud of that. I think that's a good thing, good direction to move into. This specific task force, this group will make recommendations and hold hearings. And I'm very proud and excited that we are doing this and that, so many thoughtful leaders in our community collaborated on this. And, another purpose of this resolution too is for the city to consider an apology for the institution of slavery. So pretty great stuff right there. Switching topics, this is a common thread throughout our community in particular is that, the issue of UVM reopening and COVID. And I've been in constant communication with a lot of faculty, staff, previous professors I've never had, neighbors, even folks who are within the college age group that are fearful and taking the threat of COVID very seriously. I've been fully in tune with the plans for reopening and figuring out how to impactfully address this really pressing issue and a lot of the common and very valid fears of our neighborhood. So that's real time. On another front, this is very neighborhood centric. I'm working with the DPW open a dialogue with Chapin and a few others over there and getting some additional signage in the neighborhoods of Buell, Bradley, Hungerford, and South Union regarding traffic calming efforts and mitigation of a lot of the large trucks that go through the neighborhood. Because I know that a lot of the large trucks and a lot of neighbors have brought this to my attention, use the roads as cut through routes, and it's not very conducive to a peaceful living atmosphere. So I really want to get those kind of in and done with soon. So those are my updates.
Okay. Zariah or Jack, who's ever up? Oh, Zariah's unmuted, so you want to go? Zariah? Jack, you can unmute.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just on a little bit of a delay. Yeah, so I have, I guess, two big updates, which the first one is that the joint committee, which was created by the racial justice resolution, has their first meeting tomorrow. Obviously can't speak a lot to what they've done since we haven't met yet, but personally, I guess I'm hoping that that'll kick off the process for three things. The first is, this will be in conjunction with both the committee and the administration, at least the way that I'm envisioning it. So first being that, doing kind of an assessment of the Burlington Police Department and some things around that. The second, and I think to me at least the more important one, is to also start kind of a community assessment of what we want public safety to look like. So things like, how do we have neighbor conversations that are facilitated by someone who can take the time to do that? How do we have kind of noise complaints that are, or response to noise complaints that are a little bit more real time? And then the third thing is how do we immediately start to take some of the burden off our police officers on some of the call volumes, especially for those type 3 kind of non-emergency calls, and put that in the hands of different kind of folks, whether those are community facilitators or social workers or mental health experts, any of that. Sorry, can you all hear me? Am I cutting out?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, awesome. So that's at least my vision. Again, we haven't met yet, but after a meeting, I'm planning on doing a front porch forum post to kind of let the community know how that went. The second thing is the just cause eviction, which went through CD&R and has now been referred to charter change. So hoping to get basically stop no cause eviction, so people getting evicted without a reason, so without breaking lease, without non-payment, things of that sort. We do have a clause in there which has received some discussion, which don't quote me on the exact language, but I think says something akin to like the city may also set like a maximum percentage increase with the sole purpose of preventing de facto evictions, with the purpose of that being if you have no cause evictions, but somebody can increase your rent by 100%, hundreds of dollars at the same could essentially be an eviction. And so it's really, really not meant to be a backdoor to rent control. It's really meant to prevent evictions that have no cause. And so that'll come back from charter change, hopefully. I think they have a deadline of November 9th. So that should hopefully make it on the March ballot. So something to look forward to.
Great. So Jack, we'll hear from you. We do have some hands raised too, so we would like to leave some time for that.
Sure, yeah, thanks. Yeah, my main focus over the past few weeks, I think probably all three of us, but speaking for myself, has been on the UVM reopening, and I think tonight was really positive. I continue to have concerns that others have voiced and continue to reiterate about the testing 2 times per week and the real-time response being a couple of them to reiterate. But I won't dive into that because that's been the bulk of tonight. Couple other things. So we had either a 4 or a 5 week break from council meeting. So the meeting 2 nights ago was really the one that that we're kind of catching you up on here. I would say, and I'll hit on a couple other things from that. There is also a joint committee that Zariah and I are part of that's looking into the regulation of ADUs, or I'm sorry, the regulation of short-term rentals. It had previously done ADUs, now it's doing short-term rentals. So Airbnbs, and I know some of you all have gone to those meetings, but those resumed last night and we'll be picking back up every few weeks. And then in terms of the council meeting on Monday, there was a policy around minimum parking requirements and sustainable transportation requirements for new developments in the downtown and along transit corridors, along bus routes. That was about a year in the making, and it passed council last night. So it's almost over the finish line. I think there's one more public hearing before adoption. But I worked a lot on that along with the administration and the joint committee and others, and really happy with how that came out. I think it has some really strong requirements for new developments to support their tenants and employees in sustainable transportation. And it should lower the cost of housing significantly by eliminating the minimum parking requirement as well. And one other item that is probably 9 or 10 months in the making that I've worked a lot on as well is ranked choice voting. The mayor vetoed that late last week, so we had to take a veto override vote on Monday. It was a 7-5 vote, which means that the override did not happen and the veto was sustained because you need 2/3 or 8 votes for that. So that is not going to be placed on the November ballot at this point. Still going to keep working on education and outreach for that. It has the opportunity potentially to be on the March ballot or at a later date. I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So we have one person who had a question. Jean, you're unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I can only see like 7 of you now. I did not get full screen earlier for everyone. But anyways, I'll just follow up quickly on Jack's mention of RCV. The League of Women Voters will be educating people as to our support for ranked choice voting before the March ballot. And then I also personally want to thank the DPW. If there's anybody here can report to the DPW about the work that's going on the sidewalks on East Ave. It makes it rather challenging to walk along there now, but I'm looking forward to the winter when I think the snow plowing will be a lot better and it will be safer and easier to walk on there. Thank you, DPW.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, just very quickly, Karen, sorry. In response to that, University Place, if people are familiar with that, right, on campus, basically, we just approved to move forward a redesign there. So that's another one. And Colchester Ave is obviously getting close to finishing the side path. So some nice improvements to our infrastructure.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Jack. So we had the mayor scheduled to give a little quick update about City Place, but I'm not sure if he's left the meeting.
Oh, I'm still here, Karen.
Okay. Great. So we don't need everything. We know it's painful, but great. Thank you for coming back.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to talk about it. And if people have questions, I can try to answer them. We are in a sensitive moment with the project, and that anyone who was following it is, the big picture, in case you haven't been following it, a pretty remarkable thing happened over the course of the summer. Brookfield, one of the largest real estate developers in 2019, they were reported the largest real estate developer in the world, After 2 years of essentially asking for more time, acknowledging that they had not, that the developer obviously manifestly was not making good on their performance commitment to the city by continuing construction, something that they have, a written commitment that they made in the development agreement executed back in 2017. And after 2 years of reassurances, publicly, privately, in writing, in materials that were being given to state government, for extension of our TIF district, after 2 years of reassurances that they were committed to a transformational project, took steps in July to just renege on those commitments entirely, renege on their commitments to the people of Burlington, and exit the partnership, and essentially return control and full ownership, apparently. Not that we are really privy to all the details of exactly what is contemplated, but to Devonwood Investors, which is the entity owned by Don Sinix. And it's stunning to me that a company of the resources and the reputation of Brookfield would be taking this step, and we have been moving as aggressively as we can to stop it and hold them accountable for their responsibilities, their commitments to the city. And that those efforts began as soon as within days of it becoming clear that Brookfield was taking this precipitous step and attempting to exit the partnership. After consultation with City Council President Max Tracy on a Saturday, with our lawyers, we sent a default letter to Brookfield, making it clear to them that we found we were holding them in default of their commitments to us under the development agreement. And what I've said is, and talked to the council about, is that I think it is in our interest for there to be a short period here for the developers to come back to us and explain how this should be acceptable to us, or really not explain how to change what they're proposing, and reset their trajectory here, and move forward with the project that they said, as recently as a few months ago, would be in construction in August, to move forward with that. If there is not an acceptable engagement with the city soon, and it's hard to put an exact time frame on that, we will be initiating, my sense, and I think is something I would need the support of the council, but I'm hopeful there's strong support on the council for this, would be that we would take the most robust legal action we can. And I think I think we have some very significant claims after that history they just asserted to you. And we certainly have a party on the other side that is deep pocketed, and there are assets there to go after to make this right. Three kind of big picture things, and then I'll pause to see if there are questions. And I'm happy to get into more of the details, but I did write this longer in my Front Porch Forum posts and monthly North Avenue News columns, but there's sort of three big picture things I just will leave you with. One, I do want residents to know that we knew that there was a chance that things, as always, there's a chance that things can go wrong in development, and we took great pains when negotiating the nearly 50-page development agreement executed back in 2017 to protect the city and to protect taxpayers. And what that has meant up until now is essentially all of the city's not out of money for any of the essentially any of the project costs, even our own professional costs, like our lawyers and our project manager. Brookfield, the project has been paying for that up until now, and which is something I see as a clear recognition of their responsibility here and their non-performance. So tens of millions of dollars have been unspent on the site. Those have all been private dollars. The city dollars were always set up that they would come in to pay for the public infrastructure at the end of the project. So people should know we are not out of pocket expenses. There has been about $150,000 impact, $180,000 a year impact on the property taxes that property pays into the TIF district. So these are funds that go into the special economic area. And so there's really been the non-payment there, which is unacceptable and something we would be seeking if we pursue legal action, because it wasn't supposed to unfold like this. Even during this period of non-payment, there's been no impact on the general fund budget. There's been no increase in your taxes because the shorted payments, if you will, have been going into the TIF district, not to the general fund and sort of the general operations of the city. Second point, I want people to know, and this, bear with me for a second. As frustrating as this situation is, and I do believe there's no one more frustrated than me in some ways. It's certainly something I put a lot of effort into, and I'm not happy this is where we're at. At the same time, I'd ask people to consider, and I believe this to be the case, that we are, from a kind of wider lens, we step back and kind of look at where we are in a good position to realize the goal of restoring a mixed-use, vibrant neighborhood to this part of the city that has been a problematic part of the city since the 1960s, when we tore down a mixed-use, vibrant neighborhood. We haven't gotten it right as a city all those decades. The mall played a decent, a contributing role to the downtown for a while, but it was failing, certainly by the time we got into the 21st century, and as malls like it are failing around the world. It is a good thing, I believe, that mall is not there anymore, that being down actually eliminates one of the expensive barriers to getting something right in this part of town, and that is down again entirely at the developer's expense. We're also in a good position in that the site has been cleaned up as part of that demolition. The environmental conditions on the site were addressed. There's no way that anybody can build on that site now without the city having an opportunity to restore the streets, because among the details that you voted on years ago, back in 2016, I believe, was the restoration of the streets that had been given up during urban renewal, are now on the city's official map again, and anything built on that site, the city gets the opportunity to reconnect those streets. So we're in good position in that sense as well. And I think that those factors and more is one of the reasons that we have stated publicly since it became clear that Brookfield is taking this step to exit. We have had significant outreach from entities with Vermont connections that have capacity and real interest in the site. So, it's as frustrating as it is now. This is not going to be a permanent condition. Certainly, no one wants this to get going faster than me, but I do find it reassuring to kind of have those big picture lens and know that there is that interest out there. Final thing I just point out is related. I hope I've proven to you in 8 years as mayor that one of my attributes as an individual, one of the, I think, hallmarks of this administration is we don't give up. We have the persistence to get big things done like this project. I ask you to, we will be opening up City Hall Park after years of that kind of persistence in the next couple months here. And I hope anyone who's been by, most people reported to me been by the site, they're excited about that. We will be very shortly here, within days, starting the project, groundbreaking essentially for the Moran Frame project, another effort that has been 30 years in the making. And I can list more. I'm not going to give up on this as long as I'm entrusted to try to move this forward and achieve this, I think, great vision of a mixed-use, vibrant downtown. It will continue to be one of my highest priorities, and we will prevail and get this done ultimately. With that, I'm happy to and see if there are questions, or maybe we're out of time. Up to you, Karen.
Yeah, thank you. We are short on time, but if anybody has a question, I welcome it. We've got the mayor here on on the screen. Kathy Alwell, you can speak.
Hi, Kathy.
Wait, you got to unmute
You're-
yourself, Kathy.
Hi.
You have to unmute. There you go.
Yeah. Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Mauro, somehow for me, it's always a problem when you talk about the TIF district. We had a huge mall that they were paying property tax on. Now we have an open pit. And I guess my question is, are they still paying the same amount of property taxes for that they paid for that mall building? Because somehow I can't believe that we're not losing money on this.
Kathy, so yeah, I tried to speak to this. They're not paying the same amount. That's what I was referring to. They are still one of the largest property taxpayers in the city. They are paying about $180,000 a year less than the approximately $800,000 bill that they were paying previously. And so that the TIF district is short because of these 2 years of delays. It's about $350,000, $360,000 more than we were supposed to be. That is something will be persistent about as well. I think that is a clear consequence of their non-performance under the written agreement that they had with us. And while they have not made those payments yet, we will continue to pursue that and seek it. And I have some optimism about ultimately securing them. I think you understand my point that I was trying to stress I do want people to understand that shortfall has not been translated into tax increases for the rest of us during this period because of the nature of how this is incremental new taxes into the TIF district. So the general fund has been insulated from that short payment.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I don't see any hands raised. Thank you. We hope this has been horrible for all of us, but we'll see how it goes next. So lastly on our agenda, we've been very patient, although we're doing pretty good with time for all the stuff tonight. We have Jeff Nick, who is going to speak about the Midtown Motel. And I went today and looked at it.
You did?
Up close. I go by it a lot, but today I looked at it. And there's a tree down back there, if you don't know.
Oh, we know it came, yep. And
from last night.
It happens to be on the city's land. So we were hoping it would hit the motel, but it went the other way. So we were very disappointed. But anyway, thank you for having me. And so for those of you who don't know the history of this building, it was, I'll give you a quick overview. It was built in 1958 as a motel, obviously, 14 rooms. We bought it in 1995, much to my wife's dismay. But we were looking at a redevelopment opportunity and have talked to the city over the years and a number of different ideas, but for one reason or another, that hasn't happened yet. So now, and it was built on the edge of that old ravine that runs diagonally through there behind the firehouse. It was not of the best construction quality back in the day. We have an engineer's report that points out a number of deficiencies in the building in terms of the structural integrity. And now, of course, the roof is showing its age and needs to either be replaced or we would like to now take it down. We were hoping to do this in conjunction with a redevelopment project, but now's really the time to take it down. And rather than to put a $30,000 roof on it. We closed it in 2005 when the building codes changed and we needed to put either a sprinkler system in it or close it down. So we chose to close it down then in 2005. So very simply, and I sent along plans. I don't know if everybody can see them or not, but I don't think it really matters at this point. It's very simply, our plan really is to remove the motel, retain the parking that we have there. There's 14 parking spaces that we lease out, and they've been leased out since 1986, and we've continued to lease them out. So we remove the motel and put the landscaping on the very front portion. So we'd have a landscaping where the building is now, and then where it's elevated over the parking, that parking would remain. We would put the proper fencing in, the landscaping, lighting on the parking lot, and we've approached the city, the DRB once, and we've got to go back to them, I think, in September to take a second look at this. So really, from the view of the parking, you really won't see you don't see anything because we own the building next door, that duplex. So that blocks the view of the parking, from the coming down the hill. The landscaping will help block it as you look right from Main Street into the site, because it's the parking's lower down behind the building. And then from the west, you're really looking over existing parking that the city owns anyway. So the view there won't change at all, other than the motel will be gone. So happy to answer any questions folks might have. And there you go. There's a view, an aerial view of what the changes would look like. And so anyway, happy to answer any questions anybody has. Any ideas for future development? We really feel that the city has asked us, would we redevelop this by itself? And it's such a narrow lot. It really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to redevelop this on its own. It really, we believe, belongs. That super block or gateway block has been looked at a number of times over the years of what could go there. And it's a great opportunity. It's a gateway to downtown. It really deserves something much better and grander on that corner, including the city-owned land and our property. So anyway, happy to answer any questions about the demolition project or future uses.
Any questions? Carol has a question.
So I read the article in 7 Days, Jeff, and it did mention something about being a historical landmark, and that may put some obstacles in the way of doing something the way you want to do it.
That is true. We've been notified of that. You have to look really closely to see. It's an example of the international style of architecture. But there are a number of much better examples of that in town. We have hired a consultant to look into this. I've talked to the State of Vermont Historic Division about this. The way I understand it, if the building has been compromised, and it has, and it's changed, in 1986, the city granted approval for those of you who have been here long enough, there was a gelato stand on the front of the building.
Yeah.
And that's when they put in the window and door in the front of the building in 1986. Before that, it was just a blank concrete wall facing Main Street. So the facade changed dramatically in 1986, and then they did an addition out the back, and they reversed the location of the staircases, and some of the siding changed. So we're thinking that that's not going to pass muster, and it's not really going to be considered historic. So we think we can answer that question.
So if I can ask a question.
Yep.
So the Development Review Board denied your request to demolish the building, and that was because of the historic reasons? I mean, or is it because you don't have a plan? Like, a parking lot isn't exactly what we want downtown. More park, you know what I mean? Surface parking is not the greatest use of downtown.
Well, they didn't deny it because it was really a sketch plan approval. The next meeting will be where they'll make render a decision.
And when is that?
When is the meeting?
Yes.
It's either going to be September or October. We have to get our historic study completed first. So it may end up being October, but we're hoping for September. It could be October. Yeah.
Okay.
We're looking
Yeah.
at this as really in kind of an interim measure. And you're right, we don't believe the parking makes sense long-term. We believe that, well, we lease it now, so it's important to the people to lease it. There is a need for parking in that location, that's for sure. So I think it would be foolish to get rid of the parking. It sits between two existing city-owned parking lots. So it's not changing the character of that neighborhood at all. And we would hope at some point here, when the city figures out what they want to do with Memorial Auditorium, is maybe that's when a grander plan will come about. And I really think that when this, I mean, this is an ugly building, no doubt, and it deserves to be torn down, I believe. And I think once that happens, it's going to get, I think, the city excited, and people will start thinking, okay, what are the possibilities? Finally, something has started to happen on this block, and maybe can build some momentum based on just tearing the building down.
Okay, so we have two people that have questions. Louis, you are unmuted.
Yeah, I'm wondering, would you consider selling the property to the city? You said it was too narrow to do anything with, and there's that ugly parking lot that I assume is owned by the city that's next to the fire station. I mean, between your property where the motel is and that parking lot, if we're talking about a gateway, something very nice could be done on that.
Right, and we own the duplex next to it, and we've brought the city a number of plans over the years as to what we can do there to co-develop that property. So that is our goal, is to co-develop it with the city.
And those plans have not been well received?
Well, there's a number of issues with the entire site. There's an old ravine that runs through there with poor soils. There's a sewer line that runs diagonally very deep under that property right behind the firehouse. So there's a number of issues there that really need to be addressed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So lastly, we have Amanda, and I know we're running out, but I'm gonna let us finish this. Amanda?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just had a question for Nick in terms of, one, what kinds of proposals, I'm curious, what kinds of proposals you've brought to the city that they didn't accept in the past? And I'm also wondering, and you might have already told us in terms of the roof giving way, but if since the motel closed in 2005, and so it's been like 15 years that it's kind of not been optimally used land. I'm wondering why you're choosing now to ask to have it demolished.
It's a great question. We're scratching our heads trying to figure out why we haven't been able to pull something together with the city. Of course, politics plays into this, and administrations come and go and change, and thinking changes. And I mean, we did have Target wanted to do a 2-story college town store on this site. That was in the mix at one point. REI wanted to be here instead of being at the old Toys R Us in Williston. They like this site. So we've had a number of things. And of course, a hotel developer we're talking to right now would be interested in working with us. So, and even in this market. So, so there are a number of things that certainly could happen here.
Very good. Thank you. It looks like we are out of questions and out of time, but it was a really great meeting. Thank you everybody for joining us. I think we did pretty good for our packed agenda, and we still have 29 participants. Our height was 43. So a few people have gone to bed or gone to have dinner. But anyway, thank you and good night.
All right, thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you all. Good night.
Night, everyone.
Good night.